What happens when the technology we all depend on every single day, our phones, our emergency lines, even the networks protecting officials, what if that gets turned into a weapon by sophisticated foreign actors?
That really is the million-dollar question right now. It's moved beyond just worrying about data breaches, hasn't it? We're
Yeah.
seeing these coordinated efforts. They seem to be merging nation-state power with organized crime, and that creates this imminent threat to the actual stability of our cities and the safety of officials.
So our mission today is a deep dive into this,
Mhm.
specifically the recent big operation by the U.S. Secret Service, their Advanced Threat Interdiction Unit, right?
That's the one.
In the New York area, they took down a huge network, highly organized, and potentially linked to foreign governments trying to cause major, major disruption.
Yeah.
We want to really analyze the scale here, what vulnerabilities this whole thing exposed in our tech supply chain, and crucially, what steps experts are saying we need to take, to protect our digital freedom, our sovereignty.
And the timing of this bust, it really tells you something about the urgency. September 23rd, 2025. That's when the Secret Service dismantled it. We're talking 300 servers, over 100,000 active SIM cards,
Wow.
all packed within about a 35-mile radius of New York City.
And right before the UN General Assembly was supposed to start.
Precisely. The timing seems deliberate.
And the way they found it is also pretty telling, isn't it? The investigation apparently started because they were looking into these swatting attacks.
Exactly. These horrible false emergency reports designed to get armed police sent to someone's house.
And the targets were senior government officials,
Mm.
including some prominent conservative figures, right?
Right.
Like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Senator Rick Scott, Nikki Haley.
That's right. Those specific attacks led investigators down this path. And what they uncovered wasn't just a few pranksters.
No.
The level of organization, the funding required, it was immense. This network was built to generate just a massive amount of anonymous phone traffic.
And officials called it an imminent threat.
They did, because it was powerful enough, apparently, to completely overwhelm cell towers. Think about that, potentially shutting down the entire NYC cellular network.
Which means crippling 9/11 services too.
Exactly. Critical emergency services just gone offline deliberately.
And the potential uses are pretty chilling. Early analysis you mentioned suggests this anonymous system wasn't just for swatting.
No, it seems it was also a communication channel, potentially between foreign governments, organized crime gangs, even drug cartels and human trafficking rings.
So like a shared dark infrastructure for all sorts of bad actors.
It looks that way. A resource operating on a huge scale right under our noses.
To really get our heads around this threat, we need to understand the hardware, right? These SIM boxes or SIM farms.
Yes, that's the core technology they were using.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't heard the term, what exactly is a SIM box? Why is it the tool of choice for this kind of sophisticated disruption?
Right. So basically, a SIM box is a device. It's designed to hold lots, sometimes hundreds or thousands of SIM cards all at once. And it's connected to a voice-over IP gateway, a VoIP system. Now, traditionally, criminals use them to sort of bypass expensive international call rates, make cheap calls look local. But in the hands of more sophisticated groups, they become powerful tools for anonymity, for manipulating identity online.
So instead of needing like 100,000 individual burner phones and people to manage them.
Exactly. You have maybe 300 automated servers, and they're managing the digital identities, the phone numbers, associated with 100,000 local U.S.-based SIM cards.
That's incredible. It's like digital puppeteering on a massive scale.
It really is. And that's where this idea of digital sovereignty gets tricky. You could have one operator, maybe sitting thousands of miles away,
Right.
controlling the communications for 100,000 seemingly distinct U.S. phones simultaneously. They use it for massive text spam campaigns. That's smishing.
Swishing.
And in this case, it seems, for enabling encrypted anonymous communications for all sorts of illicit activities and potentially direct disruption.
And the scale. The numbers you mentioned are just wild. The source material says this farm with those 100,000 SIMs could send an encrypted anonymous text to every single person in the United States.
Within 12 minutes.
12 minutes. That's faster than almost any official alert system we have.
It's an incredible capability. And to pull that off, they have to be really good at evasion.
How do they do that? How do they avoid getting caught by the phone companies?
Well, they rapidly swap out the physical SIM cards, but maybe even more importantly, they can digitally rewrite the IMEI. That's the International Mobile Equipment Identity.
The phone's unique fingerprint, essentially.
Exactly. So they're constantly changing the SIM card and the apparent device ID. It makes them incredibly hard to track. They're like digital chameleons.
And that level of evasion, combined with the physical location,
Yeah.
that's what turns it into a national security issue, right? Not just crime.
Absolutely. The servers weren't just anywhere. They were placed strategically, near New York City's core cellular infrastructure.
And again, right before the UN General Assembly.
The potential for significant disruption was clearly there. Secret Service Director Sean Curran put it very plainly. He said the potential disruption to the country's telecommunications cannot be overstated.
Cannot be overstated. And they compared the potential impact to the cell blackouts after 9/11 or during the Boston Marathon bombing aftermath.
They did, which is a powerful comparison.
But there's a key difference, isn't there? I mean, 9/11 Boston, those were system collapses, chaos under extreme stress.
Exactly. This time, if it had happened, it would have been deliberate.
Huh.
Controlled by an attacker. That's the chilling difference. It's chaos versus directed malice.
The attacker could potentially pinpoint the disruption for maximum panic, maximum operational paralysis.
That seems to be the fear, yes.
Okay, so this whole operation, getting these SIM boxes, the servers, deploying them without anyone noticing, that points to a much deeper problem, doesn't it? The fragility of our global tech supply chain.
It really does. You have to ask, where did all this hardware come from? Where were the components made? Because the modern tech supply chain, it's just mind-bogglingly complex. We outsource everything. Hardware components, the firmware that runs on them, the software. It comes from everywhere. Germany, Japan, Taiwan, but also heavily from places like China.
And we did that mostly for cost, right? To make things cheaper.
Primarily, yes. Cost reduction and, speed of innovation. You look at U.S. computer manufacturing, for example, it dropped, over 20% annually for 5 years as production went overseas?
Drives down prices, sure.
Yeah.
But it creates these huge security holes because you can't possibly check every single tiny component.
Exactly. Think about your smartphone. It probably has parts from over 200 different suppliers around the world. Securing that entire chain, it's almost impossible.
So if we're outsourcing parts, especially from countries that might be adversaries, what's the biggest risk with the hardware itself?
Well, you have risks at all levels. Hardware, the basic chips and boards. Firmware, the low-level code baked into the hardware. And software, the programs we run. We hear a lot about software risks, like malware.
Yeah, viruses, ransomware.
Right. And that's hugely expensive. Maybe a third of PC software out there is counterfeit, often carrying malware. Dealing with that costs the world, over $100 billion a year directly, and maybe $350 billion more indirectly from data loss, identity theft.
Okay, so software is bad, but you're saying hardware risk is different, maybe worse.
It can be much more insidious, harder to detect. Imagine a tiny hidden circuit buried deep inside a chip.
Okay.
It could pass millions of tests, function perfectly normally for years, until it receives one specific, unique command sent by an attacker.
And then what?
And then it could do anything. Start secretly siphoning off data, or just fail catastrophically at the worst possible moment, like in a critical system. And it's perfect for long-term hidden infiltration.
And this isn't just theoretical. This is a real threat, especially for the military.
Oh, absolutely critical for military systems. The Commerce Department reported between 2005 and 2008, counterfeit hardware incidents involving the military actually doubled, over 9,000 cases. And we've seen actual convictions. There was a case in 2011, 2 people convicted for selling nearly 60,000 counterfeit circuits from China.
And where are they headed?
U.S. warships, military aircraft, even missile defense systems.
Good grief. That directly brings up the China factor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
National security reports often flag China as a major cyber threat actor.
Yes, the sources are pretty clear on this point. China considers its telecom industry an area of absolute state control.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning that major Chinese tech companies, think Huawei, ZTE, names we hear a lot, they legally cannot refuse demands from the Chinese government. Demands for information about vulnerabilities or backdoors in their equipment, or even user data that flows through it.
So if we use their technology, even seemingly harmless components, in any sensitive U.S. system,
we're potentially installing a vulnerability that the Chinese government could exploit whenever they choose.
that seems like a massive inherent risk.
It is, and that's why the policy recommendation is so stark. Congress is being urged, quite strongly, to update the rules for government purchasing. The idea is basically, no technology from Chinese companies should be used in any U.S. national security systems, period.
That seems like the only way to be sure, given that state control aspect.
When a state doesn't separate its corporations from its intelligence agencies, you simply can't trust the hardware.
Okay, so if that's the problem, how do we move forward? We still want the benefits of global innovation, lower costs, but we can't build critical systems on potentially compromised foundations.
Right. And the consensus among many experts isn't necessarily for more heavy-handed government mandates across the board. Instead, they're pushing for a private sector, market-driven approach.
Like what?
Think about something like Underwriters Laboratories, UL certifying electrical appliance safety.
Okay, yeah. The little UL sticker.
Right. The idea is to create a similar system for cyber supply chain security. Ratings, accreditation.
So companies would get like a security score for their supply chain.
Sort of. There's a standard called the Open Trusted Technology Provider Standard, OTTPS. It outlines best practices, things that can be audited.
OTTPS, okay.
Companies can get different levels of accreditation, maybe a basic tier A for just saying they follow the practices, up to a higher tier B or C that requires rigorous third-party audits to prove it.
And the incentive is companies with higher tiers, say tier C, can charge more or win more contracts.
Exactly. It creates a profit motive for security. If you can prove your supply chain is secure through a trusted third-party audit, that becomes a valuable asset.
A market differentiator.
Precisely. You'd likely command more respect. You could win more sensitive contracts, maybe charge a premium. It encourages security through market forces, not just regulations.
And how would the government encourage companies to actually do this?
Well, a key way would be for the government itself to lead by example. Require agencies dealing with sensitive data or defense contractors or those managing critical infrastructure to only buy technology from companies that meet certain accreditation levels, maybe tier B or C.
Ah, so you use government purchasing power to shift the entire market towards more secure suppliers.
That's the idea. It creates immediate demand for that higher level of assurance.
Okay, so that's proactive security. What about resilience? What if an attack still gets through, maybe using some hardware flaw nobody knew about? How do we recover quickly?
That's crucial, too. For the really critical stuff, military systems, core communications infrastructure, the recommendation is to invest in built-in defenses, right on the chip itself.
Like what?
Like extra circuitry whose only job is to monitor what the main chip is doing, looking for strange activity, malicious commands. It could potentially identify an attack, maybe report it, or even trigger shutdowns in similar connected devices.
How's expensive?
It is expensive. Redundancy and these kinds of built-in warnings always are. But for the most vital systems, it's probably necessary.
And for systems that are important, but maybe not, top-level military grade.
There, the push is towards cloud computing, using reputable cloud service providers, CSPs.
Why the cloud?
Because generally, the big CSPs can manage security, redundancy, backups, and data integrity much better than most individual companies trying to manage their own hardware on site.
Right, they have whole teams dedicated just to security.
Exactly. So moving to the cloud enhances resilience. If one physical device somewhere gets compromised, your data and services can likely be restored quickly from the cloud infrastructure. It helps with continuity.
Okay, now before we wrap up, there was that fascinating detail about a Secret Service operation itself. The critical omission, as you called it.
Right. When they listed the agencies involved in this major bust, it was DHS, Homeland Security, DOJ, Justice Department, ODNI, Director of National Intelligence, and the NYPD.
A lot of heavy hitters. But who's missing from that list, especially for domestic threat investigation?
The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
The main agency for domestic law enforcement and counterintelligence?
Correct. And they were conspicuously not listed as a cooperating partner, at least not publicly.
On an investigation that involved targeting U.S. political figures and critical infrastructure.
Exactly. It does raise an interesting question, doesn't it? Why might the agency normally central to handling domestic security threats have been apparently kept out of the loop on this particular, very sensitive, politically charged operation?
Yeah, it certainly makes you wonder about the coordination or maybe the compartmentalization within the intelligence and law enforcement world when things get this high stakes.
It highlights the complexity for sure. Look, the bottom line here is pretty stark. The benefits we get from the global marketplace, the cheaper goods, the faster innovation, they're real, but they just cannot come at the price of our national security.
Right.
The Secret Service acted, they took down an imminent threat in New York, but the underlying problem, compromised hardware, foreign influence potentially embedded in our tech, that problem is still out there. It's widespread.
And they specifically warned, didn't they?
Yeah.
U.S. officials said it would be unwise to assume this NYC network was the only one.
That's right. They basically told us, don't think this is over.
So, given the money, the sophistication, the foreign backing behind this network they found, designed for anonymity, political targeting, mass disruption, it leads to a pretty unsettling final thought.
Which is?
What other critical U.S. infrastructure, maybe focusing on something like election systems, or the tech underpinning other major cities, what else might be secretly compromised right now by these same kinds of well-funded foreign actors, just waiting for the signal to cause chaos?